Staying with us, Nasarawa State, known for its huge deposit of solid minerals, can now boast of having the largest lithium processing plant in Nigeria, with an average capacity to produce about 4,000 metric tons daily. While acknowledging the potential of lithium to drive Nigeria's economic growth, there have been concerns of communities being violently displaced to facilitate mining operations and the increasing wave of insecurity in the district due to the illegal mining activities. Some mining companies have also been alleged to engage in the indiscriminate disposal of waste in open waters and lands utilized by locals, resulting in pollution. But these are not the only issues. School-age girls, even as young as 12, are now being lured into prostitution with the promise of mobile phones and cash gifts in exchange for sex. Some go as far as absconding their families to live with the miners in the camps they built near the mining site. With all that is going on in Nasarawa State, the question on the lips of many in the region is, what price will they have to pay for the enrichment of a few while miners are smiling? All right, that's the big question on the lips of persons, and we are hoping that our guest in the studio will be able to address this. Joining us to discuss more, and this is the Executive Director, Revlin Development Initiative, Philip Jackbo. Good morning.
Good morning.
It's good to have you join us.
Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure being here.
I can only picture what is going on in my mind's eye, and it's sad. Seeing young girls as young as 12 being used as sex slaves, if I may use that word, because of what is going on. The intention of government, one would say, was novel, seeing that there is a deposit there of lithium, and thought, okay, it was wise to have something such that it can develop that, but taking advantage of the people itself as against what government's intentions are. Perhaps you need to paint us a picture of what was seen, because I recall an investigation was said to have been done, and that is where this was discovered.
First things first, like you said, we have to appreciate the fact that the government is looking at other sources of revenue. And the green energy revolution of the government, the green energy revolution of the world, is going to be largely driven by lithium, which is used for the batteries, for electric vehicles. Yeah. Our batteries, our phone batteries, solar panels. But unfortunately, in the race to start the extraction of lithium, which Nigeria has in abundance. Nigeria seems to be blessed with, an abundance of natural resources. And you have lithium in Nasarawa, you have it in Kogi, you have it in Ekiti, you also have it in Cross River, in abundance. But the extraction process itself is not too different from oil extraction. And the same kind of exploitation we see in oil and gas, gradually we have started
in the communities, where this is deposited.
Yes. Unfortunately, the communities most times are not part of the decision making about where to mine or where not to mine. And of course, apart from the environmental crisis, if you go to those places, you still see children as young as even 10 in the minefields. Nobody is monitoring what is happening, despite the fact that we have a mining act. Now, in the case of Nasarawa, which has been in the news in the last few months because of lithium. Yeah. The lithium find has been widely celebrated, good as it is. But we are now seeing these kind of things, like you mentioned. We see in those mining communities, poor communities without access to basics, no roads, electricity, schools. You now have, girls, very young girls, some as young as 12, going to these minefields where they have, these miners, young boys too, and, who are ready to give them money, entice them with phones and things like that. That is what is happening. So our call is that the government should pay real attention to what is happening in the mining communities, especially where lithium, which is supposed to be green, is being mined.
Are you saying that government seemingly has not learned from, communities like the Niger Delta, where we talked about oil exploration, to know what to do when it comes to oversight functions for these kinds of places?
You see, virtually in every mining community in Nigeria today, there's insecurity. In virtually all the community people are telling you that they are not part of the discussions, they are not part of decision making. Now, I want to draw out something.
Is that why we are having these issues?
Yes, of course. The oversight functions that, you see, the Ministry of Solid Minerals came up with the idea of mining marshals. Yeah. It's as a result of these kind of things. But a lot of work has to be done in even bringing the communities into the discussion. Now, the meeting of the president, I think that was 2 weeks ago, with some Chinese mining companies. Yeah. And first of all, let us throw this in. Chinese mining companies are not known to respect the environment or people. It's everywhere, across Africa. It's happening in Zimbabwe. It's happening everywhere. In that discussion, we also did not have community representatives. While the miners were there, the state governor was in that meeting, the Minister of Solid Minerals was there, and the president spoke very well, because the emphasis of the president was on the need for the miners to ensure the communities are not in ruins, like we currently have. In virtually all the mining communities, it is the same problem. Freshwater sources are polluted, no respect for the environment, and most times the miners go beyond areas allocated for mining.
Why do you think this is happening? Do you think that also that the government is not either not on ground to get these reports and understand what's happening, or just deciding not to look at
turning a blind eye?
Yeah.
Well, I think in the past there was some level of complicity. I make bold to say that. We've also done some work in places like Zamfara. The issue of banditry we are talking about today started with mining. It also started with Chinese companies doing something that was not ideal. Now, I was in Zamfara in 2010 and 11 when we had this lead poison.
Yes.
About 300 or so children died. The real stories did not come out. But some of us who visited those places interrogated people, and what we saw was the origin of the problems there. For instance, when the Chinese came, what they saw was that people were mining, the rocks, they extract the rocks, and there were central places where the rocks are crushed and processed. But the local people that we interviewed said the Chinese constructed smaller grinders, and these people took the grinders to their localities. And of course, I saw some of these. I have pictures. And the local people started grinding in their communities. So there was dust everywhere. And children, of course, is hand to mouth.
Oh, yeah.
And before you knew it, you had this crisis, pollution, kids were dying. So here again, we have Chinese in Nasarawa State. And don't forget, I think about 5 or 6 days ago, there were reports of some Chinese nationals who were arrested for what? They set up a lithium collection point without the government knowing. So the oversight function is where we need real strengthening on the part of the government.
If we have these kinds of things, why do we keep patronizing them?
That's a bigger question. Celebrating Chinese miners in Nigeria is different from celebrating Nigerian companies doing what we are bringing these people in to do. So I think the focus should, this celebration, we are celebrating Chinese miners coming into the country. Don't forget the 2 companies involved. One of them produces about 30% of the global, components for batteries, globally. So they are still here in Nigeria to make money. What we should be looking at, for instance, so that the resources, the revenues, the benefits trickle down to the communities. We should have Nigerian companies doing those kind of things. Not
Do we have the capacity for that?
Well, when we talk of capacity, what does it take to build capacity? We have Nigerians in foreign countries who are working in these places who can do these kind of things. We are just not looking inwards. We are not just looking. You can bring the Chinese to, capacitate our people, on how to do it, and then after some time they leave and we take it over. Not celebrating Chinese companies, that don't have a good track record in terms of human rights and environmental sustainability.
But it's expected that government should know these things and should know what kinds of agreement we should have, and also ensure that we enforce them. Because from what you have said, nothing like that is happening. You were in Nasarawa, I want to believe.
Yes.
And you saw the state of things. What did the people say, or were you able to engage any person in government with regards to this matter as it is?
Well, as for the people, what we did was do our report, and it's out in the public domain.
Right.
For the people, the local people, their language has been consistent. They are not part of these processes. They are not involved. There are no discussions with them. All they see
and
is
so
people coming into their community. They cannot take ownership. In fact, most of them have lost their farmlands. No agreements reached with them. So while it was good and commendable that the president was mentioning the need for these companies to actually engage, the local communities to ensure their buy-in, it is now time for us to go beyond talking about it to ensuring that it happens. You see, the trickle-down effect, just like oil in the Niger Delta, go to those communities. Oil has become a cost. And the way we are going, lithium will also end up as a cost, because the communities are not involved in the discussions. They don't know what it's high-level discussions going on. And you need to involve them, and you need to ensure that they benefit from what is extracted from their own environment. In the state of California, in the US, there are taxes on lithium mining, I think between $400 and $800, which goes back to the
But did the people
the community
talk about trying to engage the state governor, for instance, or people in government within the state, such that they turn their attention to what is happening in these communities within the state?
Well, the communities are speaking out, but who's listening to them? In Nasarawa, for instance, like I mentioned, they are speaking out. Our report is there in the public domain.
Okay.
No, it's not enough to have that report. It is about within.
These are poor people, right. Poor communities. Okay, where the gold factory has been sited. Okay, it's one of the most backward places in Nasarawa State. There are no roads in Uke. There are no schools in Uke.
There's no government presence.
So there's no government presence. So what means will the people use? And you have these power dynamics. These companies, they have the resources.
They're supposed to have representatives.
So do those people actually represent our people, or they represent themselves?
So you went to Nasarawa State. You have your findings, like you said, in public domain.
Yes.
But have you tried to also put the plight of these communities forward to the governments at a high level, rather than put it in the public domain? Well,
that's why we have government. This is something we started work on in March. So there are processes. Okay. First of all is to put it in the public domain, which we have done. And of course, those information reach the highest levels of government. They read the newspapers, they watch your program like any other. And that's why we are doing this. This is also to call their attention to the fact that, look, what we are hearing is high-level discussion. It goes beyond that. Can you really engage the people? Can we see that level of engagement? We will have seen that deep engagement between government and the people, even in that presidential meeting, because the state governor took the Chinese miners to the presidency. Why did we not have one or two representatives of the communities in that meeting to corroborate what the miners are saying in terms of engaging local communities? It is not happening. Those communities are crime scenes, as far as I'm concerned.
That's where my next question is going, because you see some reports saying that lithium could fuel the next conflict in Nigeria if issues like this are not addressed or nipped in the bud. Talk to us from that point of view, implication of government not having an oversight function or presence in such communities.
Now, we will also ask some questions which will point us in the right direction.
Right.
Now, I don't want to believe that any company from anywhere can just go into a community without some form of, government permission. Backing. Are there miners, or people in government profiting from, illegal mining? Chinese will not. About 4 or 5 Chinese nationals were arrested for. They had a lithium collection point Would they have come into Nigeria, go as far as Nasarawa State, and set up and be, moving these things out of the country and generating without
any government backing?
It's simply not possible. It's the same thing in Zamfara before the whole crisis blew up. The miners they didn't just go into those communities. They had backing from people in government. So what the Ministry of Solid Minerals is doing is good. The mining marshals, but it should go beyond that and really, really engage with those communities.
How would the mining marshals even do their job when, like you said in Uke, there's no road, there's no government presence there?
Well, I want to believe that most of the mining marshals some of them are from those communities. Okay. So they know what is happening in their community.
How did you even navigate those communities, seeing that there are no roads?
We cannot divulge everything here in public. But one thing I want to put out here is that it is very, very dangerous going to the mining sites we have in this country. Virtually everywhere you have mining, you cannot go into those communities.
What did you see?
Deliberately. Well, first of all, the landscape is a crime scene because you have craters, pits. You have children as young as 10 in those pits. Those pits can cave in. The environment is a mess. So when government says, okay, behave responsibly, ensure the environment is...
it's not enough?
It's sound bites. Can we actually see government monitoring what is happening in those communities? And it happened with oil, so you can just replicate that in your thinking of what is happening.
There are some social issues that you have brought to the fore. Child labor.
Yes, of course.
What we are seeing there happening now, and also abuse.
Yes.
When you talk about the girls, I need you to really speak to these issues because we talk about these children being our future, yet we see them being used in these kinds of communities for child labor and child abuse and all of it. We need to address it.
First of all, those communities are poor communities.
And so they're vulnerable?
They are vulnerable. So if, for instance, a poor household has a son, maybe 10 years, who goes out there, does that dangerous work, that child that should be in school, does that dangerous work and comes home with something. Most of those poor households will look away from the fact that these kids should actually be in school and not be doing these kind of things. The same with those girls that are now going into prostitution because they come back home with phones. They do competition with their friends. So I'm using iPhone. They are from poor homes. And their parents see these things and, they are very, very poor. They are not like me and you. So they can easily be enticed. The vulnerability is there. So that's why government must play the role of government. It's not enough to talk about oversight. It is important to be on ground to ensure that these things are happening. The engagement at the community level, child labor issues are addressed. But what you hear the government talk about, especially the national state government is talking about employment opportunities, yes, revenue for the state. But there are human rights issues that are very, very important that they should start looking at. There's a lot of illegal mining going on in Nasarawa State. The current governor is trying to do something, but I think it's coming from the perspective of just revenue generation. The human rights issues that go with mining are very, very important. And those are the things we should start looking at.
We already have a huge burden with regards to some of these issues that you're talking about. Number of out-of-school children, over 10 million. We talk about child labor. That's another huge number. Some would say that perhaps state governments do not understand their roles at addressing some of these things as we speak.
I do not want to believe they don't understand their roles. If we ask the question like I asked, who permitted these people to come into these communities and do these kind of things? The buck falls on the table of the governor ultimately. The buck falls on the table of the governor because you are the chief security officer of your state. You are the chief overseer of your state. So if some things are not happening or some things are happening, you have to take full responsibility. Are there people in your government who are benefiting from these mining activities, who are fleecing this country, fleecing the communities? Those are the kind of things we should... I don't think any miner will invest so much in a community that there's no backing from somewhere.
We've heard these kinds of stories over time, talking about illegal miners and their activities, not just in Nasarawa State. You mentioned Zamfara earlier,
Yes.
and some other states across the country. But the body language of our government to really go down to the nitty-gritty of finding the persons involved, those who are backing them in government, that's a huge task. We are yet to see them take a step.
Well, is it a huge task? I think is the political will also there, because we've also heard from, I think the Minister of Solid Minerals was saying something about some of the miners back supporting terrorism or funding terrorism. Yeah. Can we have their names?
We've been asking for those. Have we seen them? So matters like this, you think that we'll see government step in to address them?
It's not there. The minister was part of the meeting where the Chinese miners met with the president. We will expect that with the fact that he is championing, for instance, the mining marshals, which I repeat is very, very good, because we need people to monitor what's happening in the communities. But we have not seen real high-level, sustainable engagement with the communities, other than read it in the paper that, oh, we have spoken with the communities. We see the miners in the meetings. Pictures are taken, but we don't see the community. And it is very, very important. So,
are they members of the community? The miners, some of the miners?
Most of the miners, no, they are from outside. In fact, our findings from Nasarawa is that most of the miners, in fact, those young boys also working in the mines, some of them are not even from the community, they are from outside Nigeria. Some are from Mali, some are from Niger, in those communities.
Interesting.
Yes. Even the mining crisis you have in, I think, Osun State, ask the people, they tell you most of the miners are not from here, they are from outside.
Okay. Let me read one of the comments from your website. Aisha Bala saying the government does not have any strategy on how to utilize the mining activities to help the youths in the communities. Mm-hmm. The government should observe what is happening in other states like Zamfara, Niger, and Borno, ravaged by crisis, so as to learn from their mistakes.
Exactly.
These are the kinds of comments that bring tears to our eyes when we read them and all of that. What strategies do you think the government should put in place to help the young people, to help mining communities, so that we don't have expatriates coming to take advantage of the resources there?
Most importantly, we have a Mining Act, the Mining Act 2007. The government should muster the courage to enforce it. Those who are arrested, for instance, for illegal mining, the penalty is life imprisonment. How many people have we seen arrested and thrown into jails? And it's not those low-level people that you arrest. You have to get to the real people who are behind these things. And they are big people, some of them in government. Some of them, they have huge, humongous resources. They are fleecing the country. So it's economic sabotage. Those are the kind of people who should be in, not the few people we see, they catch 1 or 2 or 3 people and say, the real people who are behind these things. And then the engagement. Let's see real engagement with communities. Bring all the mining communities in the country where these kind of things are happening. Let's start discussions. How can we avoid the mistakes of oil? Because this is the mistakes of oil evolving again. Oil is now described as a cost. In the Niger Delta, where I'm from, we call it the oil cost. There's nothing to show for it, apart from a pocket of, people who are benefiting. But the vast majority live in abject poverty, pollution, crime scenes. And in the lithium mining, we're going to see that same level of crime again. It's already happening.
I'm wondering how much difference involving the community in conversations would bring to the table to addressing some of the issues you have raised, the social issues, the environmental issues, talk about child labor and all of it. How much of a difference would it make? Now,
what you read in that report, what the local people are saying is what they feel should be in place. Okay, the governor, when the licenses for extraction of gold and lithium was announced in January, mentioned employment opportunities. Now, if people from the community are involved, they are the ones who will say the miners should not go beyond designated points of mining. the miners should not pollute the rivers or streams. The miners should, their own people will be the ones who will ensure that those environmental sustainability, protection, education of the people is happening, because they will also serve as environmental monitors. So when something is going wrong, it will not be us from outside going to Nasarawa or going to Zamfara to do the investigation
But they
and
have
reporting.
to be empowered to be able to do a majority of this thing.
And that's what we are doing. We are trying to give them a voice so that they will be able to speak out. We may not necessarily be the one speaking for them. You have to speak for yourself. Our people will save themselves. But it has to start with these kind of things that we are doing. It started like that also in the Niger Delta. You know, when oil was struck in Oloibiri, you know, the people welcomed the oil companies, and, you know, they were celebrating, you know, they felt better life was here finally. But about 10, 20 years after that, with oil pollution everywhere, look at what happened in Ogoniland. The people started as a peaceful resistance. But when it seemed that government was not listening, the oil companies were not listening, the youth then took to violence. So it's going to follow the same trajectory if we don't start at this point to engage the people, to mobilize them, to ensure that they serve and work with those mining marshals to ensure that these miners don't go beyond
the limits
given to them.
But one thing I would like for you to also quickly address as we inch towards our time is the matter of the environmental pollution and degradation that is happening there right now, the implication, very importantly.
I started by saying lithium is described as a green mineral, but how green is it?
Is it?
Gold, we know already, is highly polluting. Unfortunately, lithium extraction, I think there are about two processes. It's either the hard rock, which involves blasting, and then the rocks are crushed, roasted, and then you get the is it particles or what they called, or extraction of the liquid from the crevices in the earth, and then you have mining ponds that are allowed to evaporate, and then what remains is the lithium. So those are the two processes, and both processes involve massive pollution. A lot of ground and fresh water is used in the processing. So it's the landscape is affected. Farming is affected because most of the community people will have to give up their farmlands. There's air pollution and there's noise pollution when these blasts occur. Right. And these blasts, sometimes they are carried out without notice to the communities, and suddenly if you have high blood pressure, right, you are on your own. So it's unfortunate. We should not allow what happened with oil to happen with lithium.
All right, we'll leave the conversation here now. Philip Jakpo, he's the Executive Director, Renewable Development Initiative. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me.
All right, we'll take a break. When we return, we'll bring you the news update. Stay with us.